Welcome to What the Ish. I'm your host, Patricia San Pedro. Today we are joined by Veciana Suarez, a beloved columnist and author of several books, including The Chin Kiss King, Flight to Freedom, and a collection of essays, Birthday Parties in Heaven. Anna's personal losses have been many and deep, yet she's found ways through her writing and sharing of stories to bring hope and even joy back to her life and richness of emotions to her readers. Join us today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to What the Ish. I am so happy to be joined by this wonderful, amazing human being that I've known for many years and I admire, Veciana Suarez. Welcome, my friend.
Well, thank you, Pat. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so happy that you're joining us today. I was telling you before we started recording that one of my desires with this podcast is, I call it nourishment for the soul, because I think we're in a time where we all need some kind of nourishment, and we need to hear from people who have gone through whatever life challenges that a lot of other people go through. But now they're on like the other side, and maybe some of these decisions that they've made in life have propelled them, their ish, whether they were fulfilled-ish in what they're doing or happy-ish, and it takes them to a new place. And I think you're one of those people in my book. So
yeah, sometimes willingly, sometimes not so willingly.
And that's life, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
Life. So you want to share a little bit about this? What are you doing? Maybe a little bit of your history. And then whatever it is you want to share, and then we can talk about where you are today.
Well, I have, and this is something I've my friends know. I have this little poster that was kind of laminated by a friend of mine, and it's right on the door of my home office, and it says, "I feel like my life is a test I didn't study for." And I think this truly describes my life, because I've been through so many ups and downs, and then I sometimes feel that the downs are the deepest. And I think, I don't know if that's just because of what's happened to me or just human nature, that the loss is what hurts the most. But I feel as, if I had to predict, even 30 years ago, let alone when I was, a teenager, I would have never predicted that some of the choices. That's why I said some willingly, that you are kind of given an option or kind of pushed to an option, and others are not. I always wanted to be a writer. I can't remember. Well, at one point, I did want to be a civil engineer because I love bridges. Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I was very good in math. And I always thought, and to this day, I'm constantly taking pictures of bridges. And I just think they're fascinating. But anyway, but I've always wanted to be a writer, and it's just writing has taken me in different places. And then in addition into, my personal life, as you know, Pat, my first husband, the father of my 5 children, died of a heart attack at 37. So I obviously was not prepared on any front. And then after that, there's been a lot of different losses, for me. My sister and brother-in-law were killed in an accident. And more recently, 14 months ago, my daughter died, who was my only daughter. I have 4 sons. And each of those losses is so different. And this was one of the deeper losses that I knew was coming, and how one can be in denial of it until, reality doesn't let you get away with it, and the helplessness of it. And how you kind of just continue and on, like I say, you soldier on. And part, I think, that I've changed is not that it hurts any less. I just think that when you have so many losses of that are so close and that come when you don't expect them or when you're young, is that you know there's an end to it. It doesn't make the going through it any easier, but at least you know there is not an end. You don't ever stop hurting. You just learn to live with it. It's kind of this scar tissue, and you just go on. And I think that comes with experience, not necessarily wisdom, just experience
and strength
that you know, and
faith,
you know, that you know, okay, I'm going to get through this, and there are going to be moments that are going to be very dark. And sometimes that darkness, you just lean into that darkness and say, okay, I know I'm going to feel this way for a bit. And then you kind of like, you know, it's like a needle returning to its natural angle, you know, like a compass.
well, I admire how you do that.
Oh, thank you.
Really, because not you know, and I think you're going to inspire a lot of people here by them listening to that, and they can relate, you know, to some of what you're saying, right? But you always use, from what I've known you for a long time, you know, I've always noticed that, you know, the Buddhists call it turning poison into medicine. And I've always loved that saying, because the poison are these things that you just described, those things that happen to you, right? Like for me, it was cancer twice. So that's the poison. But then what do we do with it? You know, and I've always admired how you've turned it into beauty with the way you share your stories in your writing. And that is such a gift.
And for me, part of it is catharsis. And I'm not a person who like emotes, you know, who cries, you know, and I have friends who, you know, who will cry over my loss much more than I do. But I think it's because I have another avenue that I can, you know, bring that hurt out. Maybe if I didn't have that avenue, it would be different.
That's so interesting you say that. When I was going through my own cancer, I didn't emote like that either. I think I had one day when I went through that. However, you know, I created a support group. When I took some of my girls to their first chemo appointment, I was a mess.
Yeah.
And I think my ability
and I understand that.
You understand that? So I think, and I wrote the book that was my cathartic moments, right? And then with the girls, I can so relate to what you're saying.
And I find, and I don't know what this says about me, that I find a lot of comfort in work. And, you know, maybe it's also the kind of work that I have. But I always tell myself, if I can get through the first hour when I sit down, the first hour of writing is always the hardest, because you're like pinballing all over. And then, but once you get in that zone, it's so absorbing, whether it's, you know, writing journalism or working on my book. That's it. That's my world. And I don't see anything else. And I think that has helped a lot. And I've always told my kids is find something that you are so passionate about that when you wake up in the morning, you want to do this. And I'm going to borrow something because my husband says that you say not good God morning, but good morning, God, that you're like, oh, I'm alive for another day to do something I truly, truly enjoy, even if you struggle to do it, because nothing comes easy, but that you can move on to do it, and that it gives you a purpose. I think it's very important to have a purpose in life, and then to have priorities as well. And I think the pandemic in a way has kind of done that in many ways.
Yes, I was going to ask you how that shifted your life and what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, I'm a kind of almost a very type A self-disciplined person. So I have this whole routine before I sit down to write. And I had to be at my desk at a certain time. And then I found with the pandemic, it really didn't matter. If I started 10 or 15 minutes later and I sat outside, it was just because time was, I think, more elastic during the pandemic. But one of the things that, to be honest with you, really surprised me was how much I miss seeing my children and grandchildren. I think it was very, very hard that I didn't have the physicality of them to touch them. Not so much my kids, to be honest, but with my grandkids, and all this stuff. I was surprised by how really, really horrible that was for me. And that I was, my kids saying, no, we're doing this for you, Mom. And I was willing, I don't care if I get COVID, I need to see them, and it was that kind of hard part, that
I get it.
that has made me realize, okay, there are times that I am not, that is going to be totally devoted, and for me to be totally present, in a kind of family setting. I used to work Saturday all day.
Come closer to your mic. Something happened to your audio. It's a little lower for some reason. It just went lower.
Oh, is this okay? Let me, you know what? Let me move it. I'm moving it for the volume a little.
Okay,
is that better?
Sounds better. Yeah.
Okay. So I just went in. So I just found that I realized that of this window of time before, grandchildren grow up, and you're not that cool anymore, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh. And I knew that with my children, but with your children there's that whole other layer of responsibility that, when, at least for me, when they were off to college, I was like, thank God, because they needed to see the world. With grandchildren, you realize it's a little different. They don't live with you. You get them in just kind of special dosage,
Right.
because of, they're with their parents. And I think that, to me, even though I think I'm very family oriented, was kind of a, that need, not so much the want, what a need it was.
Isn't that amazing? I think so many people have gone through that. I mean, I remember, like, after the first wave, I live alone, so I don't have anyone.
Yes.
And the lack of physicality, I mean, like a hug.
Yes.
A hug from a friend is, I mean, I get it from my cats. Thank God I have cats.
Yeah.
But it's not the same thing. And I think that threw so many people into depression during the pandemic. Tons.
Yeah, and I was fortunate to have, like, my husband, no matter how much we got on each other's nerves, but we were there for company. We would do things together, even if it was just walk around the block.
Right.
But it was the physical, the human touch, how important the human touch is.
Let me ask you something. You talked about how, I don't know if the word you used was rigid or structured. You've always been, right? When it comes to, this is the time you start to write, this is what you do. It reminds me of Isabel Allende. You know who I love? She says
Yes.
she always starts writing on January 8th, which I told her when I met her that, did you know that was Elvis Presley's birthday? She didn't.
And what I've read also is that she has an office outside her home. I don't know if this is still
Oh,
true. I remember reading, yes. And she physically goes to an office. And because I've worked so much of my life at home, for example, it wasn't, for me, the pandemic didn't change that much the actual work. What it changed is that because I know that I spend so much time alone, I always made it a point to meet people, friends for lunch
yes.
or a group of friends for dinner. If they couldn't do it, that wasn't the option.
Right.
But even if you're in a creative field, I think a lot of people don't understand how important that self-discipline is and how important that structure and how important it is to treat it as this is your job.
Because it is.
And because it is. And if I don't do it, I don't get paid. It's not like it's just falling from heaven. So that has come, not now. And in certain ways, it helped me. I mean, the first 2 or 3 weeks in the pandemic, I was a little thrown for a loop because we didn't know. I mean, we were ordering, remember what we were doing with groceries? We were ordering food and then we were in the garage. It was like this whole factory line.
Or warehousing.
Yeah. And you cleaned it and, all this stuff and things we didn't know at that time. But once I just got back into the kind of the regular routine, and I was actually very busy, the first 7 or 8 months with work, so in a way that was good. It kept me, but it was not having that option.
Right.
I don't care. FaceTime, yes, is wonderful. And I had done Zoom. I was very familiar with Zoom actually before the pandemic. It's not the
Not the
same.
same. Not the same. Have you found that you're a little bit more flexible now?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't think I stress out as much about certain things because I think, in the grand scheme of life, probably in a week, it won't be so important. In a year, it won't be so important. And I think it was the pandemic, but it was also, my daughter's death. And then even 7 weeks before that, my father died.
Right.
So it was womp, womp. And in the end, when you have, like, for example, we had a lightning strike between my neighbor and us.
Mm-hmm.
So it fried our big screen TV. It fried my router. So we had to go out and kind of set all this stuff up. And we were all like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And it's going to cost. And then I'm thinking, what does it matter? It's solvable. I can just go to the store, order by Amazon, whatever I need to do.
Yes.
Just plug in. It's going to be a headache to get this all figured out.
But it'll
And
be
here
fine.
we are. We have internet.
We have internet. I know. It's funny because I tend to be a very peaceful person. I tend to focus on peace a lot. And the same thing. I've had major issues with my house. I have to get a septic tank now, which is going to be almost like, I can't even tell you how much money. In the midst of that, my air conditioning leaks. There may be problems with my foundation, yada, yada, yada. And, it doesn't make me happy. But am I going to leave my peace? Am I going to completely freak out and stress out over that?
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
Fast forward, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. And I think the pandemic and just our own mortality, I think gives us perspective, because in addition to suffering my own loss, I had family members who lost somebody to COVID. I have a first cousin whose husband, my age, who died in less than a week from COVID. And when you find out something like that,
Yeah.
you go, wow, no underlying conditions, nothing. And, I had my hairdresser's husband just recently died, and he was in his 50s, much younger than I am. And
I
that
heard
puts
about, I
things in
heard about
perspective.
him. I heard about him. Hmm.
It's like,
Yes.
whoa.
Yep. It's fleeting. And you know it better than anyone. It's fleeting.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
that
about,
says, wow, is this really going to matter so much in a week?
and it's
No.
not. And it's
No.
not.
It's just kind of an obstacle, an irritation, an annoyance. And I think that also comes with age, but I think kind of the pandemic accelerated it.
I think the pandemic has aged everyone, no matter how old they are. And it's brought, I think, a lot of insights and wisdom even to the 20-year-olds and even the younger kids who are now, facing going to school
Oh, I know.
with all that's going on all over the country and all over the world, right? So it's just it's a new reality for us.
Yeah. And a gratitude that we live in a country where we can go and get our vaccines. And in fact, if we want to get a booster shot,
Yes.
where that's not happening. I mean, I think the only other country that was very quick about it was Israel,
Right.
but
Right. We're blessed. And I've heard of so many people that have actually come to this country
oh, yes,
for the vaccines.
for the vaccine.
Mhm.
From, I've seen it and I've heard it. I'm, nobody I know relatives, but
Right.
other
Right.
friends who had relatives who flew in from Mexico and
Yeah. Yeah.
so on. So
Let me ask you, Anna, I know that we used to work together at the Miami Herald many years
yes.
ago, and you left. You want to
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that decision that you made, and it was kind of like I would call it an ish that propelled you to go down a different path.
Right. Well, in 2017, I was offered a buyout. Actually, our whole features department. And as you well know, when anybody who is familiar with newspapers, it's kind of been in a, I don't think of it as a death, because I think it will be another format.
Mhm.
And what my generation thinks of, holding the newspaper is just going to migrate, and
Right.
print will be something different. And it already has migrated to a great deal.
Right.
So at that time, they offered some of us, jobs there, and to which I was very grateful. But there were a lot of things that just I thought weren't going to be good for me. And one of them, really big important one, was kind of like, my age being, and the fact that it was going back to news, and I felt I was going backwards. Instead of, even though there were things that I thought, oh gosh, this would be part of me, this would be really exciting to cover this. And even now with all the news, the journalist part of me says, oh, what must it be like? And are they gonna, there's still that part that after more than 40 years, you can't ever
Sure.
close.
Of course.
Yeah. Right. But I think a part of it was, in talking with my husband, I thought, what am I going to regret not doing? And, I have this chunk of money that's coming. You have Cobra, so you can figure out your health insurance. But what would I regret? I had long wanted to kind of return to fiction. And I had done it in the past, some 20 some years ago. But it's very difficult to do. And I think it was more that question, what would I regret not having done? And it was not taking that leap. I feel that I've always played it safe. I had to. I have 5 children to support, 5 children to put through college, all this stuff. Well, now it came at the perfect time. My youngest had graduated 2 years earlier. Thank God they're all in professions, not like some of my friends who are having to kind of support their
Right.
children. They're in professions much more stable than journalism is, earning good money.
Mhm.
I didn't have to worry about anything like that.
Mhm.
So it was almost like I didn't have to think about it, even though I said I'm going to think about it for a weekend. But just from, that day, I kind of knew I'm going to be sorry if I don't take this sleep now, because if not now, when? And as I tell my children, I'm running out of runway here. I'm running out of runway. And as I go doing that, so I did that. And then the book I had long wanted to write, and really I'm saying it's been since high school. I had always had this idea of writing about this one character, famous character in literature. But I knew it was going to have to involve a lot of research, because I knew nothing about that time period, nothing literally. And I just had this general idea. I didn't have any storyline. I had one character.
Since high
So
school?
Since high school.
Wow.
I had read Don Quixote in Spanish 4. I had lived in Bolivia and had gone to a school where it was bilingual. So I read it in the original Spanish. I don't know how many people really still even do that.
Right.
And I always thought, oh my God, Dulcinea is like this muse. She's almost always off stage. It would be so cool to do, a book on her. And I knew I had always wanted to write books, and I wanted to do this and so on. And so here it is. So I think this was kind of my opportunity, like this dream that you hold on and it's always in the back burner. And I knew it was going to involve a lot of time. So that kind of, there was that little push in there.
So now?
So now, as Dulcinea was sold earlier in the summer, and it was, I put it out and put it on social media once it was announced in Publishers Weekly. And the name of the book obviously is Dulcinea, and it will be out in fall 2022 or spring of 23. So apparently there are all kind of supply chain issues, even with publishing. Who
Really?
knew, right? Yes, like paper, even printing and production. So you talk about the pandemic, even.
Right.
And
you're doing it in print. You're releasing it in print first.
In print. And what people don't realize, when you're traditionally published, it's an 18-month window, because you go through, it's not just it's out there and you finish it. No, it's a window of time. So,
but it's done.
But it's done pretty much. There's probably going to be last minute edits, and the whole cover, and it's been, like I said, more than 20 years since my last novel, which was a young adult novel. So the industry has changed considerably.
Yes.
So this is going to be, I think this is going to be like a first time for me, is what I think of it.
I love it. I can't wait to read it.
No, so it's, it's exciting, because it's this, it was done, and I was finishing with the last minute edits that my agent had wanted when my personal life was falling apart. And I was like, oh my God, knowing this freight train was coming and feeling so helpless. You couldn't even go into hospitals. I mean, it was that where we were last summer, remember?
Right.
And, the horror. And here's this, as a writer, when you've hit, this is something I'm proud of.
Yes.
And you go through all these drafts until you get there, and having these two parallel lives, really, this horrible dread, and then this, oh, I'm getting there. I'm fulfilling something that has been a long road.
It's an interesting, it's
How these two things can live side by side.
That's right. Life is so interesting. I mean, I can't even.
Yeah. And here it is. So that's an exciting thing to look forward to, that I have.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that there aren't times that I'm like, really sad, really, really sad, and just angry and feeling helpless, and some deaths are harder to accept. My dad was almost 92.
Right. That's different.
He was so ready to go. He had been for a long time. And I think for him, of course, towards the end, he was unconscious. He was probably happy.
Right.
There was part of him like, okay,
it's time.
It's time. But, when there's a young person or something sudden, no, because there's a whole life ahead of you.
Right. So how do you, I think because you just shared so much that's so important. I like to finish these off with, if you can give a little gem of, because of your life experience, right, of something that might help someone that is going through the loss and the grieving right now. If you can offer something to them that might help.
One of the things I have found is that we are stronger and more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And I think we have to trust that strength within us to get through, and know that you are going to get through it, and it's not easy, and accept and give yourself permission to be angry, to be miserable, to resent the fact that other people still have their children, their whole, all this cocktail of emotions that you're going through, sometimes all within 5 minutes, not even like within a month or a week or whatever, all in like 5 minutes, all that stuff, but that you eventually get used to it. And I just think humans in general are a lot more resilient than we give ourselves credit. And even when you're going through things, there are moments of joy. There really are, or even celebration. My youngest son is getting married. He got engaged. I enjoy, when like my youngest grandchild, who's 2.5, runs to me, and it's just like, I'm, the bomb. There's nothing better than me stepping up. You can still have those joys. It's hard, but you have them, that they can coexist, which is, I think, what we don't always understand until we go through it.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks.
Thank you so much for opening your heart here today.
Thank you.
Love you.
Love you, Pat. I wish I were there. We could just.
I know. Thank you, sweetie. You have a beautiful, beautiful day, and I can't wait to read your book.
Thank you. Go read Dulcinea. All these years in the making.
Is there a website or something for that yet?
Well, no, because they don't have the cover or anything. Okay. So I think as it goes, but I'll share
it when it comes out.
Thank you.
All right, honey.